They said no one could touch the cursed King of Thorns and live. But when Arwen Vale fell at his feet, the fire in his blood went silent for the first time in years. He called her shadow of his peace. The court called her witch. And the kingdom called it doom. But fate called it love. This is a tale of power, pain, and a love strong enough to defy destiny itself. Let's make it fun. Comment your location below, and by the end, I'll see which part of the world was the most hook. The storm had been growling since dawn. It rolled across the grey hills like an old beast that refused to die, shaking the worn rooftops of the Vale estate. Inside, Arwen Vale moved quietly through the long corridor, her arms filled with silks and ribbons that weren't hers. Her stepmother's voice cut through the still air. "Careful with that hem, girl. Do you want to shame us before the entire court?" Arwen winced and lifted the folds of silver fabric higher so they wouldn't drag on the floor. "I'm sorry, Lady Morwen," she murmured. Her voice was small, but steady. Lady Morwen didn't hear or didn't care. She was busy fastening a diamond clasp around her daughter Celine's throat. Celine sat before a mirror, her reflection glowing with calm beauty. Pale hair like spun moonlight, eyes soft as rain, the kind of beauty people remembered. "You must make the king notice you," Morwen said, fussing with the gown's sleeves. A smile, a curtsy, and confidence. "Remember, the eclipse ball is not a celebration. It's an opportunity." Celine nodded. Her voice was gentle. "Yes, mother." Arwen placed the folded ribbons on the bed and stepped back, trying to make herself invisible. It wasn't hard, she had practiced her whole life. Her father had once called her his little dawnlight, but after his death, even that name had faded. Morwen treated her like a servant, reminding her often that a wolfless Omega has no place among the strong. Arwen's wolf had never stirred, no whisper, no spark. Just silence. Yet she could feel things. The ache of Celine's quiet nerves. The sharp hunger in Morwen's chest that pulsed like fire. Emotions came to her like scents in the wind. Sometimes she could ease them, a soft touch to calm a crying servant, a whispered word that soothed pain. But such a gift was not admired in their world. It was feared. "You'll come to the ball, won't you?" Celine asked suddenly, turning toward her. "You deserve to see the celebration." Morwen's glare was sharp enough to cut glass. "She will not be seen. The king's court is no place for a common girl." "I only meant," Celine started, but Arwen quickly shook her head. "It's all right," Arwen said softly. "I'll stay out of sight." The stepmother's tone softened only when she looked at Celine again. "You are our family's future. If King Draven chooses a mate, he'll want one with grace, not pity." Arwen bent to pick up a fallen ribbon, hiding the twist in her chest. Grace, not pity. Always that difference between them. Outside, thunder rumbled again. Somewhere far away, bells began to toll, 6 slow notes that echoed through the valley. Celine stood, smoothing her gown. "The carriages are here." Morwen nodded and turned to Arwen. "Make yourself useful. Carry the cloaks and stay behind us. No speaking, no looking anyone in the eye. Do you understand?" "Yes, my lady." They descended the grand stairway. The marble floor still held the cold of winter. Arwen pulled Celine's velvet cloak around her shoulders and clasped the silver pin she'd spent all night polishing. The carriage waited beyond the heavy doors, its lamps glowing in the rain. As they climbed inside, the air thickened with perfume and nerves. Morwen's jewels glittered like frost. Arwen sat near the door, half-shadowed, clutching a smaller cloak of her own, grey and plain. Celine looked out the window, her breath fogging the glass. "Do you think he's truly cursed? The king?" Morwen gave a short laugh. "Of course. But curses can be managed. All men are broken in some way. A queen's duty is to polish the cracks." Arwen glanced at her hands. They trembled slightly. "They say his curse kills those who touch him." Morwen's lips curled. "Then let's hope Celine's touch is strong enough to survive." Lightning flashed outside, casting their faces in pale light. For a heartbeat, Arwen saw herself reflected in the glass, a girl in a plain grey dress, eyes too knowing for her age. She swallowed hard and looked away. She had no intention of being seen. Hours later, the rain stopped. The carriage jolted as it climbed the winding road to the city. Ahead, the royal citadel rose against the dark sky like a black crown. Its towers pierced the clouds, every window lit with golden fire. Music drifted faintly on the wind, a chorus of flutes and drums that made Arwen's heart race. When they stopped at the gates, the guards bowed. Lady Morwen of House Vale. Her daughter, Lady Selene. No one said Arwen's name. Inside, the great hall shimmered with light. Hundreds of nobles filled the space, their laughter echoing beneath banners of silver and black. At the far end, the throne stood empty, waiting. Arwen lingered near the wall, clutching Selene's cloak. She had never seen so many people or so much power. Each noble woman sparkled like a jewel, their wolves humming faintly beneath their skin. The air was thick with pride and scent and expectation. Then the doors thundered open. Silence rippled through the hall as King Draven Thorn entered. He was taller than she imagined, dressed in black armor chased with silver. His face was carved from stone, beautiful and cold, but the left side was marred by a network of silver scars that caught the torchlight. His eyes were pale gray, nearly colorless, like winter ice. No one breathed. Power rolled off him like smoke. When he passed, nobles bowed low, afraid to meet his gaze. Arwen felt the pain inside him before she understood it, deep, raw, endless. It tore through her senses, sharp as a scream she could not hear. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest, dizzy. "Arwen," Selene whispered. "Are you all right?" She nodded quickly, forcing a smile. "Just nervous." Morwen nudged Selene forward. "Now, daughter. Remember, smile. Bow low." As the king walked past their group, Morwen gave Selene a small push to make her step into his path, but her sleeve caught Arwen's arm. The shove was small but sharp. Arwen stumbled forward. A gasp swept the room as she fell to her knees, directly at the king's boots. The silver cloak slipped from her hand, puddling like moonlight at his feet. Her breath caught. The hall went utterly silent. "Forgive me," she stammered, reaching to grab the fallen fabric. Her fingertips brushed the toe of his boot. A shock hit her like lightning. Pain, ancient, searing pain, flared through her body, then quieted. The burning vanished, replaced by an aching calm. She looked up, startled. King Draven's face had changed. For the first time, his expression wasn't distant or cold. It was startled, disbelieving. His gaze locked on her, sharp and searching. "What did you do?" Nothing, my king," she whispered. But his eyes didn't move away. Around them, whispers hissed. "Who is she?" "An Omega." She touched him and lived. The king's gloved hand lifted. For a terrifying moment, Arwen thought he would strike her. Instead, he extended it, palm up, an invitation. "Rise," he said softly. "Rise, shadow of my peace." She didn't understand the words, but she obeyed. His hand was cool and strong as he pulled her up. Her knees wobbled. The moment stretched the scarred king and the trembling girl, the crowd watching in stunned silence. "Name," he commanded. "Arwen Vale," she whispered. He repeated it like a vow. "Arwen." Then, still holding her hand, he turned toward the throne and began walking, taking her with him. Behind them, Lady Morwen's face went white as salt. The ride to the Obsidian Keep was silent. Arwen sat alone in a small carriage surrounded by soldiers in black armor. No one spoke to her. The rain had begun again, pattering softly against the roof as the forest swallowed the road. Her mind replayed what had happened again and again. The king's hand. The way the air had gone still when he touched her. The sudden quiet inside her heart, not emptiness, but peace. For a moment, she had felt his pain vanish. And then, nothing. At last, the carriage stopped. The door opened, revealing the looming fortress. The Obsidian Keep looked alive in the lightning, dark spires clawing at the sky, walls slick with rain. No banners, no color. Only black stone and the faint glow of torchlight. The gate creaked open as she stepped inside, escorted by 2 guards. A woman in gray met her at the steps. Her eyes were sharp but not unkind. "The king is waiting," she said. "Follow me." Arwen obeyed, clutching her cloak tight. The halls were lined with books and strange runes carved into the walls. Every sound echoed. Her reflection wavered in the polished floor, small and ghostly. They stopped before tall double doors. The woman knocked once. "My king, the girl is here." A deep voice replied from within. "Enter." Arwen's heart pounded. The woman opened the doors, gave her a small nod, and left. Inside, the chamber was vast and dim. A fire burned low in the hearth, casting gold light over maps and weapons laid out on a heavy oak table. King Draven stood near the window, his back to her, black armor catching the glow. For a moment, she didn't dare move. "Come closer," he said without turning. She stepped forward until she stood a few paces away. "Your Majesty, why did you fall?" His voice was quiet but carried easily in the stillness. I tripped, my king. Lies are useless here." He turned slowly, and she saw his eyes again, those pale grey eyes that missed nothing. "You were pushed." Her breath caught. It doesn't matter," he interrupted. "Tell me instead what you did to me. I don't understand." His jaw tightened. He pulled off his glove and held out his hand. Scars laced the skin, dark and uneven, like lightning burned into flesh. "Every moment of my life, this burns," he said softly. "A curse in my blood. When you touched me, it stopped." She stared at his hand, her throat dry. "I didn't mean to." "What are you?" he demanded. "I'm nothing, sire. Just an omega." His gaze sharpened. "Omegas don't silence pain. I have searched the world for healers, witches, seers. None could do what you did by accident." Arwen's hands trembled. "It's just, sometimes, when I touch someone who's hurting, it feels like I can take a little of it away. My mother said it was an old gift, but..." He stepped closer, and she stopped breathing. "But what?" he asked quietly. "It's useless," she whispered. "People say it's not a real power." Draven studied her for a long moment. The firelight flickered across his scars. "It's far from useless," he said finally. "It gave me silence." He reached out his scarred hand again, slower this time. "May I?" She hesitated, then nodded. His fingers brushed hers, and there it was again. That strange current, the quiet hum of something vast and alive. The faint tremor in his hand stilled. He exhaled, a sound that was half relief, half disbelief. "You see, the fire listens to you." She looked up, startled. "The fire?" He gave a wry, tired smile. "That's what it feels like. A fire in my blood. You cool it." Arwen's voice was barely a whisper. "Then it must be your heart that listens, not the fire." For a heartbeat, silence. Then, to her surprise, a soft laugh, low, rough, and real. It made her chest ache strangely. "You are bold for someone who trembles so much," he said. She flushed. "I didn't mean." "Don't apologize for speaking truth," he cut in. "Most of my court never does." He released her hand but didn't step back. "You will stay here in the keep. Close enough that I can find you when the curse worsens." Her heart jumped. "Stay. But my stepmother will have to live without you." His tone left no room for question. "You have given me something I thought lost forever. Peace. That is not something I can ignore." She bowed her head, struggling to breathe evenly. "As you command, my king." Draven studied her for another long moment, then turned back toward the window. "There are rooms prepared for you. Rest. Tomorrow, you will begin your duties." "What duties, sire?" He didn't turn. "To keep the fire quiet." As the door closed behind her, Arwen pressed a hand to her heart. It was still beating fast, wild and unsure. Outside, the storm raged against the fortress walls, but inside, somewhere deep within the black stone and silver scars, the cursed king slept peacefully for the first time in years. And Arwen Vale, the invisible girl no one saw, had just become the most important person in the kingdom. The morning light barely touched the obsidian keep. It filtered weakly through the tall windows, painting the halls in faint silver. Arwen woke to the sound of distant bells, her thoughts still tangled with the memory of the night before his hand, the scars, the warmth that pulsed between them. Her room was simple but far better than anything she had ever known. A small bed, a basin of clean water, and a window overlooking the grey valley below. The mountains stretched endlessly, their peaks wrapped in mist. It felt both beautiful and lonely. A soft knock came at her door. "Enter," she said, hesitantly. The woman from last night stepped in, the one who had led her to the king. Her grey uniform was neat, her silver hair tied back. "Good morning, Lady Arwen," she said. Arwen blinked. "I'm not a lady." The woman's mouth curved slightly. "You will find that in this place, titles shift easily. The king ordered breakfast sent to your chambers. He wishes to see you after." "The king?" Arwen's heart skipped. "Now?" "Yes. When the bell tolls again." The woman set a tray on the table, bread, fruit, and warm tea that smelled faintly of honey. Arwen thanked her and tried to eat, though her hands wouldn't stop trembling. What did he want from her? Why her? When the bell rang again, she followed the servant through the maze of stone corridors. The castle felt alive in a strange, heavy way, every echo of her footsteps swallowed by the walls. They stopped before two great doors carved with a sigil of a crown wrapped in thorns. "The king's study," the servant said. "You may go in." Arwen hesitated. Then, taking a deep breath, she pushed the doors open. Draven Thorn sat at a large table covered in scrolls and maps. The fire in the hearth glowed low, casting warm light over his scarred face. He wasn't wearing his armor today, just a dark shirt rolled at the sleeves, revealing the strong, scarred muscles of his forearms. His eyes lifted as she entered. "You're awake." "Yes, my king." "Draven," he said quietly. She blinked. "Your Majesty, my name is Draven. You'll use it when we are alone." She hesitated, unsure if it was a test. "As you wish." "Draven." Something flickered in his expression, amusement, or maybe surprise. "Better," he said. "Come closer." Arwen stepped forward. He studied her for a long moment, as though trying to read her thoughts. "You look frightened." "I'm not frightened," she lied. His lips curved faintly. "You are. You wear fear like armor. But I don't blame you. Everyone here fears me." "I don't," she said softly before she could stop herself. His eyes met hers, sharp, steady, and dangerous. "You should." Arwen lowered her gaze, heat creeping into her cheeks. "I saw your pain last night. I felt it. A man who carries such pain is not a monster." He leaned back, silent for a long time. The fire crackled between them. Finally, he said, "Sit." She obeyed, taking the chair opposite him. "You calmed the curse," he said. "Do you know how long it has been since I slept without agony?" She shook her head. 8 years. His voice was rough. 8 years of fire under my skin, every breath a knife. And with one touch, you gave me silence. Arwen's throat tightened. "I didn't mean to." "Intent does not matter," Draven said. "Effect does." He looked down at his hand. The scars there still glimmered faintly, like silver threads. "Tell me about your gift." "I don't know much about it," she said. "When people are hurt, I feel it as if their pain sits inside me. And when I touch them, sometimes it fades. My mother said it's an old trait from before the wars. But people fear it. They call it unnatural." Draven's jaw tightened. "They fear what they do not understand. I know the feeling well." He rose suddenly and crossed the room to a shelf. From it, he took a small dagger and turned it in his hand. "Show me," he said. Arwen's eyes widened. "Show you what?" "That your power is real." Before she could stop him, he drew the blade lightly across his palm. A thin line of red appeared. "Your Majesty." She stood, horrified. "It's nothing," he said calmly. "Now, touch it." Her hands shook. She reached for him, pressing her palm over the wound. The moment she did, warmth spread through her body, a soft, glowing hum that made the air feel alive. The blood stopped. The skin beneath her hand cooled. The cut faded into a faint mark. She pulled back, breathing hard. Draven looked at his healed palm, then at her. "Incredible," he murmured. "You've done what healers could not." "It's not just healing," Arwen said quietly. "I feel what you feel. The pain, the fear, the loneliness. I can't make it vanish, only soften it. He studied her intently. Then perhaps that is what I need. Not a cure. A quiet. Silence settled between them. Outside, thunder rolled over the mountains. Finally, Draven said, "You'll remain here. You'll walk where I walk, dine when I dine, and sleep when I sleep. If the fire stirs, you'll be there to silence it." Arwen looked at him, startled. That's a great responsibility. He tilted his head slightly. Would you rather return to the ones who called you nothing? The answer came before she could think. No. Then it settled. He turned away, his tone softer now. You may go. Rest. The keep has few kind faces, but no one will dare harm you under my name. She hesitated, then bowed. Thank you, Draven. When the door closed behind her, he stood motionless for a long time. The fire crackled. His hand, the one she had touched, was still warm. And for the first time in years, the curse inside him was silent. Days passed in quiet rhythm. Arwen's new life inside the obsidian keep felt like living in a dream that might dissolve if she breathed too hard. Every morning, she walked the stone corridors beside the king to council meetings, to the training grounds, even to the library where he read ancient scrolls by firelight. At first, she spoke little. But Draven seemed to prefer her silence. He often worked for hours without saying a word. Yet every time his pain began to flare, she could sense it, like a storm rising under his skin. A faint tremor in his hand. The tightening of his jaw. And then she would move closer. A light brush of her fingers across his arm. A whisper of warmth between them. The pain would fade. The guards noticed. So did the courtiers who came to deliver reports. They began to whisper when she passed. The Omega Witch. The king's pet. The girl who tamed the curse. Arwen pretended not to hear. One afternoon, as she organized papers in the study, Draven said suddenly, "They talk about you." She froze. "I know. They envy what they don't understand," he said. "I don't like being feared." He looked up from his desk. "Then stop giving them a reason to fear you." Her brow furrowed. "I don't mean to." His expression softened slightly. "I know." He rose and crossed the room, stopping near her. The space between them felt charged. "Do you miss your home?" he asked. She hesitated. "Home?" She almost laughed. "I don't think I ever had one." "You speak like someone twice your age," he murmured. "How old are you?" 20, she said. He nodded. Too young to have seen so much cruelty. For a moment, his gaze held hers steady, unreadable, and yet somehow gentle. Then he looked away. "You should eat. You've been standing all day." "I'm fine," she said. "You're trembling." "It's the cold." He reached out without thinking and touched her wrist. The heat from his skin spread instantly. Her breath caught. "You're warm now," he said quietly. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, everything else vanished: the castle, the whispers, the curse. Just the two of them, caught in a fragile stillness. Then the door slammed open. "Your Majesty," a soldier barked, bowing low. "Lord Varric requests your presence in the council chamber." Draven dropped her wrist, his voice turning sharp. "Tell him I come when I wish." The soldier hesitated. He said it was urgent. "News from the border." Draven's expression darkened. "Very well." He turned to Arwen. "Stay here. Touch nothing." She nodded, though curiosity tugged at her. When he left, the silence in the room grew heavy. She wandered to the window, staring at the rain-swept courtyard below. A few guards sparred near the gates, their movements precise and brutal. She didn't notice the footsteps until the door creaked open again. "Quite the privilege you have," a voice drawled. Arwen turned. A tall man stood in the doorway, elegant, silver-haired, his smile sharp as a knife. "Lord Varric," she said quietly. She'd heard his name whispered among the servants. "The king's uncle and his most dangerous advisor." "You know me," he said, stepping closer. "Good. Then you know your place." "I don't understand." "Oh, I think you do." His gaze slid over her like cold water. "You're clever. You found a way to make yourself useful to the king. But usefulness fades. The king's affections, however brief, are unpredictable. Arwen's hands clenched at her sides. I don't seek his affection. Varric chuckled softly. No. Then what do you seek? Power. Pity. A crown, perhaps. I seek peace, she said simply. He studied her face, then smirked. Peace. How quaint. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Let me offer advice, girl. When the king grows tired of you, and he will, I suggest you vanish quietly. Because if you don't, I'll make sure you do. Before she could reply, he turned and left, his cloak sweeping behind him. Arwen stood frozen, heart pounding. When Draven returned hours later, she was still in the same spot. His eyes narrowed immediately. What happened? Nothing, she said quickly. I was only thinking. He stepped closer, his presence filling the room. You're pale. Did someone speak to you? I'm fine, she insisted. Arwen. His tone softened. Tell me. She hesitated, then met his gaze. Lord Varric said something cruel. But it doesn't matter. Draven's expression turned to steel. It matters to me. She shook her head. Don't. I don't want to cause trouble. You won't, he said darkly. He will. Before she could answer, he reached for her hand again, brushing his fingers over her skin. The contact sent that familiar warmth through both of them, calm and fierce at once. Do you feel it? He asked quietly. Yes. It's strange, he said. Every time you touch me, I forget what I was angry about. She smiled faintly. Then perhaps I should never stop. The corner of his mouth twitched, the ghost of a smile. Careful, Arwen. You may find I take that offer seriously. The moment hung between them, fragile and bright. Then he stepped back, the mask of the king returning. Rest now. Tomorrow, I ride to the Southern Watch. You'll come with me. She blinked. With you? Yes, he said simply. You're my peace, remember? I don't leave peace behind. That night, as Arwen lay in her bed listening to the rain, she thought of his words. She was an Omega, once unseen, unwanted. Yet somehow, she had become the king's calm, his silence in the storm. And though fear still lingered in her heart, a new feeling had begun to grow beside it. Hope. The southern road stretched between the forests like a scar of pale stone. Clouds hung low, bruised with rain, and the king's escort rode in silence through the mist. Arwen sat in the covered carriage behind Draven's black stallion. She could see him through the window, tall, straight-backed, his dark cloak flowing behind him. Even at rest, he moved with controlled power, the kind that made men cautious. The journey had been long. The soldiers rode ahead in formation, their banners drooping in the damp air. The woods whispered around them, filled with unseen eyes. At midday, they stopped beside an ancient watchtower to rest. Draven dismounted and came to her carriage. You've been quiet, he said as she stepped down. I didn't know what to say. Most people don't, he said, but his tone was not cruel. He gestured to a fallen log near the fire the soldiers had built. Sit. Eat something. Arwen took a seat, unwrapping a small piece of bread. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled of earth and smoke. Draven stood near the fire, staring at the sky as if searching for something beyond it. You don't like traveling? She asked. He looked at her, surprised by the question. It reminds me of war. Have you fought many? Too many. Enough to learn that victory is rarely worth the cost. He sat beside her, his presence large and quiet. You lived through the border raids, didn't you? He asked. She nodded. My father was a healer. He died helping the wounded. That explains your gift. I don't know if it came from him, she said softly. But I remember him saying that pain connects us more than strength ever could. Draven stared into the fire. A wise man. They sat in silence for a while. The soldiers whispered among themselves, glancing occasionally at their king and at the girl who sat beside him. Later that night, they reached the Southern Watch post, a crumbling fortress at the edge of the wildlands. Draven's men spread out to inspect the walls. Arwen followed him through the courtyard, her cloak brushing the wet stones. Inside, the great hall smelled of damp and steel. Draven dismissed his guards and turned to her. This place was built before my grandfather's time, he said. It still remembers blood. Arwen traced her fingers along a crack in the wall. You can feel it. He looked at her curiously. You sense the past too? Not the past, she said. Just the pain it left behind. For a long moment, they said nothing. The torchlight painted his face in gold and shadow, softening the sharpness of his scars. Then he asked quietly, Do you fear me? Arwen hesitated. Sometimes, she admitted. Not because of the curse, but because I don't know what you'll do next. A faint smile ghosted across his lips. Neither do I. He took a step closer. The air between them grew warm. When the fire inside me rises, I lose myself. You've seen a glimpse of it. If it ever happens again, I'll stop you, she said firmly. His eyes searched hers, something like disbelief flickering in them. You would stand before me even then? Yes, she said. Because you're worth saving. Draven looked away sharply, as if the words struck too deep. He turned toward the window, where the wind howled against the shutters. You should rest, he said. Tomorrow, we return to the capital. She didn't move. And you? I'll keep watch. Because you don't trust your men? Because I don't trust myself. Before she could reply, a sound echoed from the courtyard, a low, mournful howl. Draven's hand went to the hilt of his sword. Stay here, he ordered. But Arwen followed him anyway, her heart pounding. Outside, the guards were tense, their eyes scanning the fog. Something moved beyond the walls, a shape darker than the night. Then it was gone. Wolves, a soldier whispered. Wild ones. Draven's expression didn't change, but his hand clenched tighter around his sword. It's not wolves, he said quietly. It's something older. The fog thickened, swirling around them like smoke. Arwen felt the pulse of his pain flare not from the curse, but from something else. A deep, instinctive dread. She reached for his arm. Draven. The moment her fingers touched him, the tension broke. The fog began to thin, retreating as if burned away by unseen light. The guards looked around, confused. It's gone, one muttered. Draven's gaze went to her hand still resting on his arm. His voice was quiet. Even the darkness listens to you. Arwen didn't know what to say. She only knew that, for the first time, he was looking at her not as a tool, but as something, someone, he could no longer ignore. The return to the capital was swift. The moment they arrived at the Obsidian Keep, the air grew heavy with the buzz of rumors. Servants whispered in corners, and nobles lingered in corridors, pretending to admire the architecture while listening for news. Arwen could feel their stares as she walked beside the king. They bowed to him, but their eyes followed her. That evening, the royal court gathered for the first time since the journey. The grand hall glowed with torchlight, banners swaying gently in the draught. Draven sat on the high seat, his face a mask of calm power. Arwen stood to the side, half hidden by the throne's shadow, exactly where he'd told her to stand. Lord Varric was the first to speak. My king, he began smoothly, the southern border remains secure, I presume? For now, Draven said. But there are signs of movement beyond the mountains. Varric bowed his head slightly, his silver hair gleaming in the firelight. And this, companion of yours, did she help keep the darkness at bay? Murmurs rippled through the room. Draven's gaze hardened. She is my attendant. Her role is not for you to question. Of course, Varric said, feigning humility. Forgive me, my king. It is only that the court wonders what sort of magic allows one so untrained to soothe a curse that even our priests could not touch. Arwen felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she stayed silent. She has a gift, Draven said simply. One that brings peace where there has been none. Varric's smile didn't reach his eyes. Peace can be dangerous, sire. It makes strong men soft. And those who bring it often demand more than gratitude. Before Draven could respond, another voice spoke, soft, hesitant. Uncle, said Celine. Arwen turned, startled. Her stepsister stood near the pillars, dressed in pale blue, her expression anxious. She hadn't seen Celine since the night of the eclipse ball. Varric arched a brow. Ah, the lovely Lady Celine. You return at a fortunate moment. Celine bowed to the king. Your Majesty, I only came to deliver a message from my mother. She asks forgiveness for any offense at the festival. She speaks too boldly sometimes. Draven's voice was cool. Her boldness nearly cost your sister her dignity. Celine flinched. Yes, sire. She regrets it deeply. The court whispered again, the word sister echoing like thunder. Varric's smile sharpened. Ah, so it's true then. This girl is of noble blood. How fascinating. One would think her family might have mentioned such a connection when seeking favor. Draven rose from the throne. The movement was quiet but powerful enough to still every voice. I have no patience for your games, Varric. My court will not be a nest of vipers. Varric bowed low, though his smile never faded. Of course, my king. I serve only your interests. Then remember this, Draven said. Those who whisper poison will taste it themselves. He turned and left the hall, motioning for Arwen to follow. In the corridor beyond, the tension broke. Draven walked in silence, his steps echoing on the stone. Arwen hurried beside him. You shouldn't have defended me, she said. I defend what is mine, he answered simply. She stopped. Yours. He turned to face her. You're part of my household. Under my protection. That is what I meant. Of course, she said quietly, though her heart didn't believe him. They reached his study. The fire burned low, casting long shadows. He removed his gloves, running a hand through his dark hair. They'll come after you now, he said. You understand that. I'm used to being hated. He gave a short, humorless laugh. Not like this. They'll twist what they can't control. But let them. They've tried to curse me before. She studied him, her voice soft. And did they succeed? His eyes met hers, weary but burning. Every curse needs a willing heart to hold it. Mine was willing once. Arwen's chest tightened. You mean love? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the window, staring out at the rain. Once, I loved someone enough to believe I could escape what I am. I was wrong. She died because I was wrong. Arwen stepped closer. Draven. Don't, he said sharply. Then, more quietly, don't pity me. The past is ash. I don't pity you. He turned, and for a moment, the mask dropped. Then what do you feel? Arwen hesitated, then whispered, hope. Something broke in his expression, the smallest crack in stone. Hope, he repeated softly, as if testing the word on his tongue. It's been a long time since anyone offered me that. Before she could reply, a sudden knock shattered the stillness. A guard stepped inside, bowing low. Forgive the interruption, sire. There's been an incident. One of Lord Varric's men was found dead in the stables. Draven's face hardened. How? A wound from within. No weapon found. Some say, the curse did it. Silence filled the room. Draven's eyes met Arwen's, and in them she saw a flicker of fear not for himself, but for her. Stay here, he said. She reached for his hand. Be careful. He nodded once, then turned and strode into the hall, his cloak swirling behind him like a shadow. Alone, Arwen sat by the fire, her fingers still warm from his touch. Outside, thunder rumbled over the city, and deep within the castle, the first true sparks of rebellion began to burn. The sun never fully rose the next day. A veil of grey hung over the kingdom, heavy and strange. The air itself seemed to hum, restless, expectant. Arwen stood at the tall windows of her chamber, watching the distant mountains blur into mist. The sky was pale red, though it was still morning. It's coming early, murmured a voice behind her. She turned. Draven leaned in the doorway, still dressed in black, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. What is? She asked. The blood moon, he said. It shouldn't rise for another week. But the curse stirs before it. Arwen frowned. Does it hurt? It always hurts, he said softly. But this is different. It's calling. She stepped closer, her heart aching at the hollowness in his voice. Calling for what? He gave a short, bitter laugh. For freedom. The curse wants to rule, not me. Arwen's hand moved instinctively to his arm. Then we'll stop it. Draven's gaze lifted to her face, searching, as though he couldn't quite believe her words. You speak as if it's a small thing, like silencing a storm. She smiled faintly. Every storm ends when the sky remembers it's meant to be clear. Something in his expression softened. He reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch was brief but full of meaning. You shouldn't speak like that, he said quietly. Like what? Like you care too much. I do care, she said simply. You've carried this alone long enough. He turned away, jaw tightening. If the curse breaks free, it will destroy everything near me. You, most of all. Then teach me how to fight it. Draven looked back at her, startled. You don't know what you're asking. I do, she said. If I can calm it, maybe I can learn to keep it from rising. He studied her for a long time, the firelight flickering across his scarred face. You truly have no fear. Arwen smiled sadly. I have plenty. I just don't let it stop me anymore. For a moment, silence stretched between them, warm, charged, unspoken. Then Draven stepped back, breaking it. Meet me in the Hall of Mirrors at dusk, he said. If you want to help me, that's where it begins. The Hall of Mirrors was older than the castle itself, a long chamber of glass and silver, built by the first king who believed reflection could keep spirits away. Now, it was the only place where Draven dared to face the curse. When Arwen entered that evening, torches flickered along the mirrored walls. Her reflection multiplied endlessly, dozens of her faces, each pale and nervous. Draven stood at the center of the room. The faint crimson glow of the rising moon bled through the high windows, painting him in red light. You came, he said. You told me to. I expected you to change your mind. I don't change my mind once I've chosen a path. He gave a small nod, almost a smile. Then listen carefully. The curse feeds on my anger and my grief. It wants me to lose control. Your presence weakens it, but when the blood moon rises, it will fight harder. You'll see the worst of me. Arwen took a step closer. I've seen your worst already. You call it pain, but it's only the shadow of who you were forced to be. Draven inhaled sharply, as if her words hit a wound. You have no idea what you're walking into. Then show me, she said. His eyes burned with warning and something else. Fear, maybe. Or protectiveness. Still, he nodded. When the moon peaks, the transformation begins. If I lose myself, I'll bring you back, she interrupted. He said nothing. Only looked at her, as if memorizing her face. Then, quietly, so be it. The moon rose crimson over the mountains. The first scream tore from Draven's throat before Arwen understood what was happening. He staggered, clutching his chest. The silver scars across his skin began to glow, bright lines of fire that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. His breath came ragged, his body trembling. Draven, stay back, he growled. But she didn't. She ran forward, grabbing his arm. The moment her hand touched him, she felt it, the burning chaos inside him, twisting, alive. It clawed through his veins like living fire. He dropped to his knees. His eyes, once grey, flared red. His voice was not entirely his own when he spoke. You shouldn't have come. I told you, she said, struggling to steady her voice. You don't face this alone. The heat scorched her palm, but she didn't let go. Listen to me, Draven. You're still here. You're stronger than this thing. He snarled, the sound inhuman. Shadows curled around him like smoke, thick and alive. Arwen, his voice broke. Run. No, she said, tears streaming down her face. I'm not leaving you. Then the world exploded in light. The mirrors shattered. The wind howled through the chamber. Arwen's feet slid across the floor as the energy burst from him, wild, desperate, uncontrolled. But she didn't fall. She reached again, pressing both hands to his chest. Look at me. For a heartbeat, his red eyes flickered, then steadied. His breathing slowed, though the shadows still writhed around him. Please, she whispered. Come back to me. A long silence. Then, with a sound between a growl and a sob, Draven collapsed against her. The glow dimmed. The fire faded. Arwen held him until the storm of magic died completely. His head rested against her shoulder, his chest rising and falling unevenly. You should have run, he murmured hoarsely. And leave you to burn alone, she said softly. Never. He gave a low, tired laugh. You're either brave or foolish. Both, she whispered. He looked up at her, his face pale, his eyes grey again. You stopped it, he said. She smiled faintly. No. You did. For a moment, neither moved. The room around them was a ruin of broken mirrors and ash, but the silence that followed felt sacred. When he finally stood, he helped her to her feet. You risked your life, he said. She met his gaze. And I'd do it again. The night after the blood moon should have been calm, but the castle was not. The servants whispered of broken glass and red light spilling from the old hall. None dared speak of what they saw. Arwen stayed by Draven's side. His strength hadn't fully returned. He spent hours pacing restlessly, as if afraid to stop moving. Sleep, she urged. You need rest. He shook his head. I can't. The curse isn't gone. It's only waiting. Then we'll wait with it, she said gently. Together. He turned to her, and for the first time, there was something like defeat in his eyes. Why do you keep saying we? Because you keep saying I, she replied. He stared at her for a long time, then said quietly, You talk like someone who's never seen what happens when I lose control. I have, she said. And I'm still here. He looked away, but his jaw tightened, betraying emotion he wouldn't voice. Later that night, when she returned to her chamber, she found a folded cloak on her bed, black, lined with soft fur, embroidered with the royal sigil. A note lay beside it in Draven's sharp, precise handwriting. You stood in fire and did not burn. You'll need this when the cold comes. She traced the words with her fingers, smiling faintly. But peace never lasted long in the obsidian keep. The next morning, an urgent summons called Draven to the council chamber. Arwen followed quietly, though he had not asked her to. Inside, the nobles were gathered tense, angry, whispering. Lord Varric stood at the center, his eyes gleaming like steel. My king, Varric said, bowing just enough to feign respect. We have a problem. The curse grows worse. The people talk. They say you brought a witch into the castle, and now even the moon bleeds. Draven's expression didn't change. Do you believe their tales, Varric? I believe what I see, the man said smoothly. And I see a trembling kingdom led by a cursed king and his mysterious Omega shadow. All eyes turned to Arwen. She felt the heat of their suspicion, but she held her ground. Careful, Draven said, his tone deadly calm. You tread close to treason. Treason? Varric smiled thinly. No, my king. Only concern. If you cannot control the darkness, perhaps the council must choose someone who can. Draven's eyes went cold. Say it plainly. Varric stepped forward. Step down. Before the curse consumes us all. The hall erupted in murmurs. Arwen felt the tension snap like a drawn bow. Draven's voice dropped to a whisper that cut through the noise. You forget who I am. Varric met his gaze without flinching. No, my king. I remember too well. You are the monster the crown hides. Draven moved so quickly the nobles gasped. In a blink, he was in front of Varric, his hand at the man's throat. The air shimmered, that faint ripple of heat that warned the curse was stirring. Draven! Arwen cried. Her voice pierced the haze. His grip faltered. He blinked, breath ragged, as if waking from a nightmare. Then he released Varric and stepped back. The old lord stumbled, clutching his neck. You see, he rasped. Even now, it controls you. Draven said nothing. He turned and strode from the hall, his cloak billowing behind him. Arwen followed, catching up to him in the corridor. You can't let him get to you, she said. His voice was rough. His right. No, she said fiercely. His not. He stopped, turning toward her. I almost killed him, Arwen. One word from you stopped me, but what happens when I can't hear you anymore? Then I'll shout louder. He stared at her, torn between anger and despair. You don't understand what's coming. Then make me understand, she said. Draven's breath shuddered. The curse feeds on the moon's power. When the blood moon returns, it won't stop at my skin. It will spill outward into every shadow, every soul it touches. It will become hunger itself. Arwen's throat tightened. And if you fight it, I die. The silence between them was heavy. At last, she whispered, then I'll find another way. He shook his head. There isn't one. Maybe not yet, she said. But there will be. I refuse to believe the stars made you to suffer forever. Something flickered in his eyes, pain, hope, disbelief. He turned away, voice rough. You should have never touched me. She smiled sadly. Maybe. But then you'd still be alone. He said nothing. Only walked away down the long hall, the red light of the cursed moon following him through the windows. And though Arwen's heart trembled with fear, she knew the truth now. The real danger wasn't the curse breaking free. It was what would happen when the man she loved stopped fighting it. The castle did not sleep. After the blood moon, the obsidian keep seemed to breathe, groaning in its stone, whispering through its halls. Servants moved like shadows, and the guards spoke in low voices, as if the walls themselves were listening. Arwen had not seen Draven since the confrontation in the council chamber. He had locked himself away, refusing food, refusing her. She spent her days pacing outside his doors, listening for movement. When she knocked, there was silence. When she whispered his name, only the wind answered. On the third night, she couldn't bear it any longer. She pushed open the doors and slipped inside. The chamber was dark. Curtains drawn. The air heavy and still. Draven sat by the window, armor discarded, his face turned toward the storm outside. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly without looking at her. I couldn't stay away. You should, he said, voice rough. For your own safety. She stepped closer, her heart hammering. You think shutting me out will protect me? He turned, and for the first time, she saw what he'd been hiding, the scars across his neck and chest burned faintly red, as if alive. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. The curse is spreading again, he said. I can feel it crawling beneath my skin. I almost killed Varric in front of the entire court, Arwen. The next time, I'll stop you, she said, firm and steady. He rose to his feet. You think you can stop me? You don't understand what this thing is. Then make me understand, she said. Don't push me away and call it kindness. He stood there for a long moment, chest heaving, fighting something unseen. Then his voice broke. Every person I've ever touched with love has died. Do you understand now? Arwen didn't flinch. She stepped closer until she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Then I'll be the first who doesn't. His breath hitched. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the cursed king and the Omega who defied him. Then he whispered, Why me? Why fight for something doomed? Because you're not doomed, she said. You're choosing to be. The silence that followed was fragile. Draven reached out, hesitated, then let his hand rest against her cheek. If I touch you too long, it might kill you. Then touch me, she whispered. Let me decide what kills me. His hand trembled. He didn't move. His grey eyes were soft and full of fire all at once. Arwen, he breathed. You're impossible. Then stop trying to resist me, she said. Something in him broke. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if the world would shatter without her there. His forehead rested against hers, his breath uneven. For the first time since his curse began, he felt peace, real peace. But peace never comes without cost. A tremor ran through his body. The air thickened. Arwen felt it immediately, the pulse of the curse awakening. No, she whispered. Not now. He staggered back, clutching his chest. It's too strong. Then let me help you. She pressed her palms against his chest, summoning the warmth that had always calmed him. The air shimmered with golden light, faint but steady. His pain surged through her, the fire, the darkness, the endless hunger. Arwen, he gasped. Stop. But she didn't. She pushed harder, tears streaming down her face. I'm not leaving you. Not again. And then the curse snapped. The light exploded, blinding and fierce. Draven's roar shook the walls, his body arching as the energy surged through both of them. The fire burst from his skin only this time, it didn't burn her. It wrapped around them both. When the light faded, they collapsed together, breathing hard. Draven looked down at her, wide-eyed. The glow of his scars was gone. Faded. Only pale silver marks remained, cold to the touch. "You broke it," he whispered. "No," she said weakly. "We broke it." He pulled her close again, his hand trembling in her hair. "I don't deserve you." "You don't have to," she murmured. "You only have to believe you can be free." For the first time in years, Draven laughed, a quiet, broken sound that still managed to feel like sunlight. At dawn, the castle changed. News spread through the corridors that the king had walked the battlements without pain. The guards who had once averted their eyes bowed deeper now. The curse, it seemed, was finally gone. But Arwen knew better. Magic never vanished completely. It simply slept, and something told her it wasn't finished yet. That morning, Draven stood before the great mirror in his chambers, his reflection clearer than it had been in years. The shadows under his eyes were lighter. His voice, when he spoke, was almost gentle. "I called for the council," he said. "They will gather tonight. It's time I made a choice." "What choice?" she asked. He turned toward her. "To crown a queen." Her breath caught. "Draven." He stepped closer. "You gave me back my life. Let me give you a name that no one can ever take away." Her heart raced. "You don't need to do that for me. I'm not doing it for you," he said softly. "I'm doing it for us." By nightfall, the entire kingdom knew. The king who had been cursed for years would appear before his nobles to crown a new queen, an Omega, a healer, a girl no one had ever seen before the moon festival. The hall was ablaze with light when Arwen entered. She wore a simple gown of deep silver, her hair braided with black ribbon. The cloak he had given her, the one lined with fur, rested on her shoulders like a shadow made soft. Whispers filled the room. "An Omega. She bewitched him. She'll ruin us all." She ignored them. At the far end, Draven stood in full royal armor, a black crown in his hands. The firelight shimmered on his scars, no longer marks of shame but symbols of survival. When she reached him, the noise died. Draven's voice carried through the hall, deep and clear. "You have all watched me burn under a curse I did not choose. You called me monster, king, and fool. Yet none of you stood beside me in the fire, except her." He turned toward Arwen, eyes steady. "Arwen Vale, Omega of House Vale, is the reason I still breathe. The reason this kingdom still stands. And today, she becomes my queen." A shocked murmur rippled through the court. Lord Varric stepped forward, his expression perfectly composed but his eyes hard as ice. "My king," he said smoothly, "surely you jest. The laws forbid such a union. A king may not take an Omega as queen." Draven looked down at him. "Then I change the law." Varric's lips curved in a cold smile. "Power can bend rules, sire, but not loyalty. If you do this, you will lose the court's favor." Draven's gaze sharpened. "I already have something greater than their favor." "And what is that?" "Freedom." He placed the crown upon Arwen's head. The hall fell into stunned silence. The torches flickered. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then the crown's silver edges shimmered with light, faint but real. The magic that had once cursed him now bowed to her touch. "She's no witch," whispered one of the nobles. "She's blessed." Varric's mask of calm cracked. "No," he hissed. "She's dangerous." He turned sharply to the guards. "Seize her." But the guards didn't move. They looked to Draven instead, and Draven's voice was iron. "Touch her, and I will end you before you draw breath." The silence that followed was thick and electric. Varric's eyes narrowed, full of hate. "You've doomed yourself, nephew. You think you've beaten the curse? You've only bound it to her." Draven stepped forward, his shadow falling over the older man. "If that's true, then it chose the stronger vessel." Varric flinched but did not retreat. "You'll regret this." "Perhaps," Draven said softly. "But not tonight." He turned to Arwen and offered his hand. "My queen." She took it, her voice steady despite the storm around them. "My king." The hall erupted in divided applause, some true, some mocking. But none dared oppose him openly now. Draven led her to the high table. You were born for this, he said quietly. No, she whispered back. I was born to find you. He looked at her for a long moment, and in his eyes she saw the man beneath the scars, not the king, not the curse, but the soul she had fought to save. But peace, again, was short-lived. As the feast began, Arwen noticed a strange stillness in the crowd, servants moving too quickly, a flicker of metal glinting near the far wall. Her instincts screamed a warning. Draven, she murmured. Something's wrong. He stiffened. Where? Before she could answer, a sharp crack split the air and the chandelier above them burst apart. Glass rained down like stars. Chaos erupted. Screams filled the hall. From the shadows near the pillars, masked assassins lunged forward. Draven pulled Arwen behind him, drawing his sword in one fluid motion. The nearest attacker fell before he could swing. Another charged from the side. Arwen grabbed a fallen spear and struck blindly. It glanced off armor, but the distraction was enough. Draven turned and cut the assassin down. Stay behind me, he barked. But as he turned again, a third figure broke through the crowd, blade gleaming with dark, oily poison. Arwen saw it first. Draven, she cried, shoving him aside. The blade slashed across her arm before plunging into his side. Time froze. Draven staggered, eyes wide. The poison spread instantly, black veins crawling from the wound. No! Arwen screamed, catching him as he fell. The assassins fled, their task done, as guards rushed in. The hall dissolved into panic. Draven's voice was faint, broken. Arwen. I told you, the curse. She shook her head, tears falling fast. Don't you dare leave me. His hand found hers, trembling. It's burning again. The veins spread. The faint glow of the curse returned, darker than before. Arwen pressed her hand over his wound. Then I'll burn with you. Don't, he whispered, but his strength failed. His eyes closed, and the fire beneath his skin flared. She gathered all the warmth, all the light inside her, and poured it into him. The pain was unbearable, like holding molten iron, but she didn't stop. The poison hissed, steam rising where her hand met his skin. The light around them brightened until the hall was washed in gold. When it finally faded, Draven lay still but breathing. The black veins were gone. Arwen swayed, her vision blurring. Draven's voice came faintly, like a dream. You saved me, again. She smiled weakly. Get used to it. Then the world went dark. The scent of iron filled the air. When Arwen awoke, her body ached as though the earth itself had crushed her. Her arm was bandaged, her vision hazy. Candlelight flickered across the room, soft and unsteady. Easy, a familiar voice murmured. You're safe now. She blinked until her eyes focused. Commander Kieran sat beside the bed, his face drawn with exhaustion. Draven, she croaked. He lives, Kieran said quietly. Thanks to you. But, he hesitated, his jaw tightening. The poison has no known cure. It's spreading through him again. Arwen struggled to sit up. Then I have to see him. Arwen. I have to, she said, her voice breaking. Please. Kieran sighed, then nodded. He's in the war chamber. He refused to rest. The corridors of the Obsidian Keep felt colder than before. Servants bowed as she passed, but their eyes were full of fear, not of her, but of what was happening behind the throne room doors. When she entered the chamber, she found Draven standing over the war table, gripping its edge for balance. His face was pale, his veins dark beneath the skin. The fire burned low, casting his reflection across the black stone walls. You shouldn't be out of bed, she said softly. He turned slowly, managing a faint smile. Neither should you. Her heart twisted. Kieran said the poison's still in your blood. He nodded once. It's unlike any I've known. It feeds the curse. Every breath I take burns. Arwen stepped closer. Then let me help. No, his tone was sharp, but the fear behind it was unmistakable. The poison is mixed with dark magic. If you touch me again, it'll spread to you. I don't care. You should. She ignored him and reached for his hand anyway. The moment her fingers brushed his skin, she felt it, the fire writhing under his flesh, the way it tried to devour everything good left in him. He hissed in pain. "Arwen, stop." But she didn't. She closed her eyes and focused, pushing warmth into him, the same way she had when healing smaller wounds. For a moment, it worked, the darkness eased, the poison quieted. But then it struck back, a violent surge that threw her backward. Draven caught her before she hit the floor. "Enough," he said hoarsely. "You'll kill yourself." She stared up at him through tears. "Then let me die doing something that matters." He pressed a trembling hand to her cheek. "No. I've lost enough." His voice cracked. It wasn't the king who spoke now, just a man who had spent his life trying to protect what he loved, only to watch it fade. The silence between them stretched until Kieran entered the room. His expression was grim. "My king. We've captured one of the assassins." Draven straightened. "Alive?" "Yes, but barely. He insists he carries a message from Lord Varric." Draven's eyes hardened. "Bring him." Moments later, 2 guards dragged in a man bound in chains. His mask was gone, revealing a gaunt face streaked with sweat and blood. He coughed, spitting red onto the floor. "Speak," Draven ordered. The man laughed weakly. "You think you've won?" His voice rasped. "The poison wasn't meant to kill you quickly. It binds the curse tighter. The more you fight it, the stronger it becomes." Arwen's stomach dropped. "Who gave it to you?" The man's gaze shifted toward her. "The one who should wear the crown." "Varric," Draven growled. The man smiled, teeth stained red. "He's already gone to the southern citadel. By the next full moon, he'll return and claim the throne from your corpse." Draven's sword moved faster than breath. The man's words ended in silence. Kieran flinched. Arwen didn't. She stepped forward and laid a gentle hand on Draven's arm. His muscles trembled under her touch, the fire inside him fighting to rise. "He's not worth your rage," she whispered. "Save it for the one who sent him." Draven exhaled shakily. "He'll burn for this. I swear it." Arwen met his eyes. "Not yet. First, we cure you." Hours later, the castle slept uneasily. Arwen sat beside Draven's bed, watching him fight for each breath. The poison had darkened his veins again, creeping across his chest like frost. Sweat glistened on his skin. Every time he winced, she reached for his hand, ignoring the pain that followed. She could feel the curse pulling at her, hungry, angry that she dared touch what belonged to it. "Don't you dare give up," she whispered. "You fought gods for this kingdom. Don't lose to shadows." His eyelids fluttered. "You should rest." She shook her head, brushing damp hair from his forehead. "Not while you still burn." He smiled faintly. "Always so stubborn. I learned from the best." He tried to laugh, but it came out as a sigh. "If I don't wake tomorrow, you will. Arwen." His voice was barely a whisper. "If I don't, promise me you'll run." "I won't." "You have to. Varric won't stop until he takes you, too. He'll say the curse killed me and the witch who caused it." "Then let him try," she said fiercely. "He'll find nothing left to destroy." His eyes closed, but his hand tightened around hers. "You shouldn't love me. I don't know how to stop." Just before dawn, the air changed. Arwen woke to find the candles guttering, their flames bending toward Draven as though pulled by invisible wind. His body was shaking, his breath ragged. The black veins pulsed brighter. "No," she whispered, heart pounding. Then his eyes opened, glowing faintly red. The curse had awakened. "Draven," she breathed, gripping his hand. "Listen to me. It's Arwen. You're safe." He didn't respond. His face twisted in pain, his back arching as the air filled with the scent of smoke. The curse rose from him like a shadow given life, tendrils of red and black swirling around the bed. The fire in the hearth flared violently, then went out. "Arwen," he rasped. "Run." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "No. Not this time." The darkness thickened, wrapping around him like chains. His body trembled, his eyes flashing between grey and crimson. "Get out," he shouted, voice breaking with agony. "It's too strong." "I don't care." She threw her arms around him, pressing her forehead to his. You said this thing feeds on your anger. Then don't give it anger. Give it me. The curse roared, a sound like thunder, rage, and grief all at once. But she didn't let go. She poured everything she had into him, the warmth in her chest, the light that had always flickered quietly behind her ribs. It flowed through her hands like liquid fire, meeting the darkness halfway. It burned. Every breath was pain. But she kept whispering. You are not the curse. You are not your scars. You are not alone. The red light wavered. His screams turned into gasps, then silence. Finally, Draven collapsed against her. The darkness peeled away like smoke after a storm, vanishing into the air. Arwen's vision dimmed, but she smiled through the pain. See? I told you. I'd bring you back. Arwen. His voice was rough, weak. What did you do? I took it, she whispered. Realization struck him too late. The black veins that had marked him now crept across her own arm. No, he caught her shoulders. No, no, no. She smiled faintly. It's all right. It needed a place to go. I won't let it take you. You can't stop it, she said softly. But maybe I can. Her strength faltered. The room swam. Promise me something. Anything. Live, she whispered. Live, and make this kingdom something worth saving. He shook his head, tears slipping down his face. You can't ask that of me. I can. Because I love you. The words left her lips like a final breath. Her eyes fluttered closed, her head falling against his shoulder. Draven held her, his body shaking. No, he whispered again and again. Not you. Not now. He laid her gently on the bed, pressing his forehead to hers. For a long time, he stayed there until something inside him broke. He let out a sound that wasn't quite human, a raw cry that seemed to shake the world itself. The curse within him, now dormant, flared briefly, drawn to his grief. But instead of devouring him, it shifted. It flowed toward her, drawn by the bond between them, a bond that had never been broken. The markings on her arm shimmered faintly. The light around her body pulsed once, twice, then steadied. Her chest rose with a faint breath. Draven froze, hardly daring to move. Arwen. No answer, but the faint glow in her skin grew stronger, steady as heartbeat. He fell to his knees beside the bed, clutching her hand. Please, he whispered. Come back. The glow brightened again. Her fingers twitched. Then, with a soft gasp, she opened her eyes. The room filled with stillness, the kind that follows miracles. Draven's heart stopped. You. She smiled weakly. Told you. I wasn't going anywhere. He let out a broken laugh, pressing his forehead to her hand. You terrified me. Good, she murmured. Now you know how it feels. He kissed her palm gently, his voice trembling. The curse. Gone, she whispered. Or maybe just sleeping again. But it's quiet now. Draven looked at her as though seeing the world for the first time. You should be dead. Maybe, she said softly. But love doesn't die that easily. He drew her into his arms, holding her as if afraid she'd vanish again. Outside, the first light of dawn spilled across the mountains, washing the black stone of the obsidian keep in gold. And for the first time in a century, the cursed fortress felt alive again. The light from the window spread slowly across the bed. Draven had not moved all night. His eyes were red, his armor discarded, his fingers still wrapped around Arwen's hand as though by holding her he could anchor her to the living world. When she stirred, it was barely a breath, a twitch of her fingers, the faintest flutter of lashes. He froze, afraid it was another dream. But then her lips parted, drawing a slow, trembling inhale. Arwen, he whispered, his voice cracking. Her eyes opened, faintly glazed, searching the room before finding him. You look terrible, she murmured, her voice weak but alive. A sound escaped him that was half a laugh, half a sob. He pulled her gently into his arms, holding her against his chest. You died in my arms, and that's the first thing you say? She smiled faintly. It seemed true. He pressed his forehead to hers. Don't ever do that again. I didn't plan to, she said softly. But the curse, it tried to pull me under. And then I heard your voice. You called me back. I thought I'd lost you. You did, she whispered. And then you found me again. Draven drew back enough to look into her eyes. The black markings that had crept across her skin were fading, replaced by faint silver streaks like starlight. You took the curse inside you, he said. How is that even possible? Arwen looked down at her hands. Maybe it wanted to be loved, too. He didn't answer because he didn't have words. Outside the window, the first rays of morning reached the mountain peaks, turning the snow gold. A new day had begun, and for the first time in centuries, no shadow rose with it. By noon, the news had spread through the castle. The king lived, the queen had risen, and the curse was gone. Crowds gathered at the gates, their fear turning to wonder. Bells that had not rung since Draven's coronation began to sound. But not all shared their joy. In the council chamber, Lord Varric stood before a gathering of nobles, his face a mask of controlled rage. You believe this miracle? He asked coldly. The king lies poisoned, the girl dies and returns, and you call it a blessing? It's witchcraft. The people don't care what it is, one noble murmured. They see her as the light that freed him. Light, Varric sneered. She is a flame that will burn us all. He slammed his hand on the table. Send riders to the southern citadel. Gather every ally who still remembers what true power looks like. If the king won't step down, we'll take his crown by force. Draven stood at the highest balcony, watching the kingdom he'd almost lost. Arwen joined him, her steps quiet on the stone. They cheer for you, he said, nodding toward the distant city below. You gave them hope. She slipped her hand into his. I gave them what you gave me, faith. He looked at her, his eyes softening. Faith in what? In the man beneath the crown. For a moment, everything was still. The mountains. The wind. The pulse of the world. Then he said quietly, Varric won't forgive this. He'll come for us. Then let him, Arwen said. We've fought shadows before. Draven smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. You make it sound simple. Not simple, she said. Just worth it. That night, the king and queen stood before their court once more. The great hall was filled with candlelight and faces, some joyful, some wary. Draven raised his hand, and silence fell. 4 generations, the curse bound our blood to fear. It ruled us. It ruled me. But no more. The shadow is broken. And the woman who broke it stands beside me, not as a servant, not as an omega, but as my equal. Arwen felt every eye on her, every whisper ripple through the crowd. She faced death, Draven continued, and defied it. She gave me back my soul. For that, she is not merely Queen of the North, she is the heart of this realm. The crowd erupted. Some knelt, others shouted her name. But even as cheers filled the air, a messenger stumbled through the doors, his face pale with terror. My king, he gasped. The southern banners, they're marching. Varric's army crosses the river. The joy shattered like glass. Draven's jaw tightened. How many? Thousands. He claims the crown is cursed. That the queen bewitched you. Arwen felt the room shift, the fear, the disbelief, the hunger for safety. Draven turned to her, his expression unreadable. It begins again. Then we end it, she said quietly. He nodded once. We ride at dawn. The wind howled over the battlefield. Snow fell in soft flakes, landing on armor, on swords, on faces marked with ash. The southern army stretched across the plains like a grey wave, banners snapping in the cold wind. Draven sat atop his black stallion at the front lines, his armor dark against the white. Arwen rode beside him, dressed in silver, her cloak billowing like a banner of light. You should stay behind, he said. I've stayed behind enough, she replied. He glanced at her. You were never meant for war. She smiled faintly. Neither were you. The horns sounded. The armies moved. Varric appeared through the ranks, riding a white horse, his sword gleaming with poisoned light. Nephew, he called. You bring your witch to war. Draven's voice carried easily across the snow. You bring treason and call it courage. Varric's grin was sharp. I bring the end of your madness. Then come and try. The two armies clashed. The sound was thunder, steel on steel, shouts and screams, the ground trembling beneath thousands of feet. Draven moved like a shadow through the chaos, his blade cutting a path toward Varric. Arwen stayed close, her touch steadying the fear and fury around her. When soldiers faltered, she reached them. Her presence alone seemed to calm the madness, to turn panic into strength. And then she saw him, Varric, cutting through the crowd toward Draven. They met in a blur of black and silver. Swords struck. Sparks flew. "You were never fit to rule," Varric snarled. "I rule because I survived what would have broken you," Draven growled, pushing forward. Their blades locked. The poison on Varric's weapon hissed as it met steel. Arwen felt the shift before it happened, the surge of dark energy, the pull of the old curse. The poison in Varric's sword wasn't just venom. It carried the remnants of the darkness she had drawn out of Draven. "Draven," she cried. "Don't let it touch you." Too late. The blades clashed again, and a spark of red magic leapt from Varric's sword, striking Draven's arm. He staggered, the heat flaring beneath his skin. The curse wanted back in. Varric smiled triumphantly. "You can't destroy what you are." Arwen ran to them, her power already rising. The glow around her hands shone like dawn breaking through storm clouds. "Step back," she shouted. Draven obeyed without hesitation. Arwen faced Varric, her eyes blazing silver. "You wanted the curse," she said. "Then take it." Before he could react, she raised her hand, and the air itself ignited. The magic surged from her chest in a wave of light, pure, fierce, unstoppable. It struck Varric squarely, tearing through his armor, his flesh, his soul. He screamed as the darkness he had fed for years consumed him instead. Then he was gone, ashes scattered in the snow. The battlefield fell silent. Every soldier, north and south, stared in stunned awe at the silver fire still glowing in Arwen's palms. Draven dismounted, crossing the blood-stained snow to reach her. "It's over," he said softly. She swayed, the light around her dimming. "It has to be." He caught her before she fell, holding her close. "You did it." "No," she whispered. "We did." When they returned to the Obsidian Keep, the people lined the streets, throwing flowers instead of stones. The curse was broken, the rebellion crushed. Draven and Arwen stood once more on the balcony where it had all begun. Below them, the valley glowed with torches and song. "Do you hear them?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "They're free. And so are we." He turned to her, brushing his thumb along her jaw. "You were my peace when I didn't believe in peace." She smiled softly. "And you were my strength when I didn't believe I had any." Below, the people began to chant, "The Light Queen. The Shadow King." Draven looked down, shaking his head with quiet wonder. "Light and shadow," he said. "That's what we've always been. Two halves of the same whole," she finished. He took her hand, raising it high so the crowd could see. "Then let the world remember it that way." Later, in the quiet of their chambers, Arwen stood by the window, gazing at the stars. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "what comes after all this?" Draven came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Peace," he said. "And maybe a future we don't have to fight for." She leaned back against him, feeling the warmth of his heartbeat. "I'd like that." He kissed her hair. "You gave me more than a kingdom, Arwen. You gave me life. And you gave me a reason to use mine." Outside, the dawn began to rise over the mountains, spilling light over the black stone towers of the Obsidian Keep. The curse was gone. The war was over. And in the golden silence of morning, the king and queen stood together, no longer shadow and light, but both. They had become the balance their world had always needed. If this story set your heart racing and left you craving more dark kingdoms and impossible love, don't vanish into the shadows just yet. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, and step back into the realm when the next tale awakens.